Pure, unbridled panic. That was what I felt within the first moments of playing Majora's Mask for the first time. I had just been transformed into a walking shrubbery and only had 3 days to figure out a way to turn back. Accidentally, I had talked to a dancing scarecrow, which resulted in me already losing most of my day. Then I had to play hide and go seek with some children, which went equally poorly since I lost the first game because I only had a few hours left and couldn't find the last of the brats. In that time, I had an experience which will forever be scorched into the back of my mind. I was hurrying, no, panicking around, trying to find that last kid, while all the people around me were talking about leaving town and the festival not taking place. What festival? Why leave town? No time to think, have to keep going. But alas, I did it. I confronted the Skull Kid and turned back time. A feeling of relief and sickness. The terror was over, but I still only had 72 hours, and the cycle repeats. But why? Why was I so stressed? I knew this game. I watched all the YouTube videos on it before. I knew about the festival and the moon and why people left town. But I still felt stress. Is it because I'm generally an anxious person? Probably. But I know I'm not alone in this, because even the angry video game nerd agrees with me here. He says the game grated at his nerves, not just while playing it, but also when he was not playing it, making him feel extreme anxiety and wondering when he could finally conquer it and get it out of his mind. And it's no secret why he felt this way. It is a very demanding game, not one you can really relax in or even take your time to finish. The reason for that is that it employs a time limit system, where the player only has 3 in-game days to finish their tasks, or risk a total reset. And this limit looms over their head constantly. Like the YouTuber Transparency put it, taking clocks is a common stress element, and the prospect of losing progress because of this will seem way too daunting for some to even feel good about approaching this game. And yet, she says, time pressure is so integral to Majora's Mask that it would be a completely different and arguably way worse game without it. And it's true. The ticking time bomb mechanic serves as the game's main drive, forcing the player to venture onwards even and especially when they're most uncomfortable. All while knowing that all their progress has to be reset in order to keep going. However, I don't think that the game's charm, if you can even call it that, consists of just the anxiety of knowing the world is going to end if you don't do anything. No, instead I believe the game's whole identity rests on a total of 3 pillars consisting of negative emotions: stress, confusion, and depression. Now, these emotions might sound like they make Majora's Mask unpleasant to play, but it's true. At times I absolutely hated playing this game and even had to stop for about a year before picking it up again. However, I'd argue that they don't detract from the game's quality, on the contrary in fact, because art doesn't have to be pleasant to be considered worthwhile or interesting. It just needs to make you feel something, and Majora's Mask does exactly that. And like the AVGN said, the game part is what gets discussed the least. So, I'll be taking a look at how Majora's Mask awakens these emotions in the player via its gameplay, and not only how it uses that to its advantage, but how it is the only way it can even exist in the first place. I'd like to begin this video with an emotion that the game evokes that I haven't really seen discussed anywhere else. Usually, people focus on how creepy or sad the game is, or how it freaks them out. But no one ever seems to talk about how confusing it is. And it has any right to be. After all, Termina is a completely new world that Link stumbles into. Hyrule is no more, there is no Triforce, no Zelda, and no Ganondorf. Nothing is the same, Link knows no one, except for a couple familiar faces. And that's really where it ends. The faces are familiar. Almost all the characters you meet are ones you've already met in Ocarina of Time, or at least they look that way. Because these aren't the same people you know, they have entirely different personalities. Some of these characters are minor and without many changes, like the carpenters, the vendors, or the guards. Ones that already didn't have that huge of a role in Ocarina of Time and don't have as much of an impact. But other characters have bigger changes, such as Marlon and Ingo being split into multiple people, Talon now being a bartender, and even main villains like Otake and Koumi being good guys. In fact, originally, even Sheik, Impa, and Ganondorf were supposed to operate the fishing hose in the 3DS remake of the game. Now, that would have been an even bigger shock and probably would have given Link severe PTSD. At the time of writing, I actually haven't played Ocarina of Time yet, but even I realized just how weird all of this is. Characters that you know and which should know you, not recognizing you at all, leaves me with just so many mixed feelings. Essentially, it's a safety net that is being taken away from you, conveying that you can't even rely on old friends, but that you're now all alone. Like being lost in the store as a kid and finding a woman that you think is your mom, but turns out to be a complete stranger. And even Termina itself is pretty uncanny. It is a mirror image of Hyrule, but has anyone ever really noticed just how advanced the technology in it is for a world set in the Middle Ages? Some of the things are minor and could be accepted if you suspend your disbelief, such as the wooden clocks which make sorta sense, or the instruments of the Indiegogo's that appear to be made out of fish bones and could run on magic instead of electricity. However, the postman's office has actual mechanical clocks, made even more obvious in the 3DS remake. The bomb shop owner also has a huge rocket to go to the moon with, which, okay, fine, but he also has a giant GameCube-like machine in the 3DS remake. What's that about? But what stumped me the most when I first played the game was when I got to the pirate fortress and saw the pirates riding around on actual motorboats. And they don't just look like them, you can hear the motors. And of course, let's not forget the music box house, which has a huge music machine connected to massive loudspeakers in the basement. Actually, the whole house itself is pretty advanced even for the modern age. And maybe you find all of these things so interesting that you'd like to take photos of them using an actual camera. No further comment. It makes me wonder if the world of Termina is not just set in an alternate universe than that of Hyrule, but in an alternate timeline even, where technology is more advanced, yet the rest of the world is still in medieval times. It's again another safety net being cut away from underneath you, that you're expecting a certain setting with certain limitations, but then you get thrown a curveball and are met with machinery that shouldn't be possible. Man, I can't even imagine how that must make Link feel. However, all of this is just window dressing, something that may make the player stop in their tracks for a bit, but not really something that affects the game itself. Instead, it is confusing in other ways, namely by being really freaking cryptic. The game does tell you where to go for the main objectives, but once you're there, you have to figure out the rest yourself, and the solutions aren't always immediately apparent. Now, this might just be me, but I got stuck fairly often and had to rely on the 3DS's help system. And even that one isn't enough at times, because it doesn't always show you the hints you need. For instance, I got stuck after having entered Akana Canyon, but all the hints the game showed me were for how to get there in the first place. So, online guides it was. Normally this is manageable, but the main temples themselves can be incredibly confusing and overwhelming. Woodworld Temple was fine, and the only one I really enjoyed, probably because of how simple it was. Snowhead Temple was worse, since I fell down a lot when rolling across chasms, which forced me to redo previous sections. Great Bay Temple, however, was just a huge waste of time and way too disorienting with its labyrinthian layout and having to backtrack a lot. It also hid a hookshot panel on the ceiling, which I had no idea was even there and never looked for, because the hookshot wasn't required at all up until this point. But Stone Tower Temple was the most miserable one by far. Its layout was needlessly confusing and just went on forever and ever, and when I thought I was finally done, the whole place flipped upside down and just kept going and going. I even got stuck at the end because I didn't realize that a chest containing an optional fairy was required to access the boss room. Now, call me bad all you like, but locking progression behind a non-essential reward isn't good game design. And the boss Twin Mold deserves a huge honorable mention for being not only the worst boss I ever fought in a Zelda game, but the worst one I fought in any game. I know this is exclusive to the 3DS remake, but the fact it regenerates its health when burrowing underground is just pure garbage. And of course, the game never tells you that, so you're stuck wondering why that stupid thing won't stay down, questioning if you're even doing the right thing in the first place. All of this confusion was made even worse by the fact that I knew I was running out of time and couldn't afford to keep wandering about until I figured out the solution. I even had to constantly reload older saves just because everything was taking way too long. If Majora's Mask had completely ditched the dungeons altogether and had instead just been about the side quests, I think I'd have enjoyed it a whole lot more. But not even those were exempt from confusing and overwhelming design. Unlike many other Zelda titles, the game is basically completely open from the start, meaning you can do almost any side quest whenever you want. This may sound good at first, except you don't even know which quest to begin with or even how to initiate them. A lot of them require you to be in the right place at the right time. Some have to be done before a certain point in time, and some can only be done after a certain point in time. But it's completely impossible for you to know any of these requirements at first, even with the bombast clues. You can unlock the Mask of Truth later on to listen to Gossip Stones for more advice, but even those are spread far apart and don't offer more than a single hint. So essentially, you can go anywhere at any time. But you also can't, because you have no idea where to go and when. And this issue is being demonstrated best by the Anju and Cafe side quest. Now, this one is supposedly the best quest in the entire game, according to fans at least. It certainly is the longest and most complex, but I also think it's the worst gameplay-wise. It's just downright impossible to do without a guide, since you aren't being told what to do at all. In the quest, you're a detective, tasked with searching for a missing person named Cafe. To even start the quest though, you have to talk to a very specific NPC and obtain a mask, and then wear that mask while basically talking to everyone until you figure out that the innkeeper Anju knows something. She then gives you a letter to Cafe and it becomes straightforward. You just have to follow the postman and see who he delivers it to. But once you actually meet Cafe, it kind of all falls apart. He tells you his mask was stolen and is waiting for the thief to sell it in a store. I figured I'd go to the store myself to investigate, and sure enough, the thief arrives. Afterwards, it was only logical to follow him to his hideout in the canyon. But once I got there was no way to progress. Because it turns out that this wasn't the solution. You have to ignore your main lead and instead let Cafe track the guy down first. Once you two are in the lair, it switches to a mini puzzle where you take turns controlling Link and Cafe, which I failed the first time because this was an entirely new mechanic being thrown at me. And why can't I use the allergy of emptiness to wear down the buttons, Nintendo? The quest just requires so much trial and error, as well as talking to very specific NPCs at very specific times. Without a guide, I'd never finished it at all. But I mean, the journey may not have been worth it, but the destination certainly was. And really, all of the side quests can evoke very special feelings that you couldn't have experienced otherwise. On my first playthrough, I got to Romani Ranch at night of the first day and found the place just crawling with aliens. I knew the quest before even playing, but I had no idea it was happening now. I rushed in there hoping I could still help, but then they reached the barn. And seeing Romani be abducted right in front of your eyes without you being able to do anything about it because you were too late is a genuinely terrifying experience, one that has been seared into my mind. And the Anju and Cafe side quest may have sucked to complete, but man, what an ending it had. Waiting with Anju during the final hours for her lover Cafe to appear was genuinely nerve-wracking, even if it was somewhat ruined by me playing leapfrog with the chairs in the room. It was just so satisfying to see the two lovers reunite against all odds, simply because of my help. This quest was the one I disliked the most, but I ended up doing it right before facing Majora once more, because I wanted to guarantee them their happy ending. So while the other side quests might be pretty difficult to approach because of how confusing they are, I feel it only adds to the satisfaction when you do end up completing them. Because by all accounts, it shouldn't have been possible, and yet, here you are. And the temples might have made me rip my hair out with their obscure design, but that rage only fueled my desire to absolutely tear Majora down when I had the chance. Because how dare it put me through all that frustration and misery? Does that make for good gameplay? No. And if this were any other game, I'd say these things should have been way easier to approach and manage for the player. But for a game already filled with negative emotions, adding confusion into the mix is only right. Now let's take a look at another one of these emotions. Stress is something I already touched upon in the beginning of the video, and it's conveyed via the game's time limit system. Let's explain it a bit further by outlining the general plot. Link, fresh after having saved Hyrule from Ganondorf, gets robbed of his ocarina and horse by a character named Skull Kid, wearing the titular Majora's Mask. By chasing the thief down, he gets thrown into Termina, a mirror image of his home of Hyrule. Here, he finds out that the world is being threatened by the moon falling down, wiping out all life in it. Link is then tasked with saving the land, for which he only has 3 days. For any ordinary man, this would be an impossible task. But thanks to Link's Ocarina of Time, he is able to travel back to the first day, resetting his progress, but giving him more time to work with. And yet, that doesn't make the task any less daunting, because time doesn't stop. There's constantly a clock ticking down until Armageddon, proudly displayed on screen. It goes by way faster than it does in real life as well, with each minute lasting less than a second. You can slow it down using a song, but never truly stop it. But maybe you're busy and not paying attention to it. Don't worry, the game makes sure you're aware of it. Almost each house in the game has its own little clock, just ticking away constantly. And the big clock tower that the town is named after will ring its bell at the end of the day, which you will hear no matter where you are. And just in case you have your sound turned off, the game's view will get smaller and smaller and smaller with each chime, before announcing the new day with its own title card and telling you how much, or rather how little, time remains. Not only that, but time affects the world itself too. NPCs will follow their own little schedules, moving to different locations at different times, and shops will only be open during certain times as well. This forces you to adjust your schedule to theirs, meaning you can't just buy items or initiate side quests whenever you like. Like I said in the first chapter, there are many quests that require you to be in very specific places at very specific times. Heck, you can even lock yourself out of certain ones if you arrive too late. Not to mention that you can't even afford to do more than a few quests at once, since they eat up so much of your time, or would require you to be in 2 places simultaneously. It's quite fitting that the town is called Unrest Town in German, because everyone is in turmoil and you aren't being given any chance to rest. you're constantly being reacquainted with the fact that time's arrow marches forward, and if you fail to act fast, you will lose everything. And you will lose everything, but not even just by failing, instead also to progress further. As mentioned earlier, you can travel back in time to the first day, which is quite handy if you want more time to finish a dungeon or side quest. However, it also means that all progress in said dungeons and side quests is cleared. So it's rather a curse in disguise of a blessing. You're forced to finish important tasks within a certain time frame, or risk redoing them all over again. Which really sucks if you can't figure out a solution or prefer taking your time to solve problems, both of which apply to me. You have to be really smart about when to reset time and when to risk going forward. It's especially unnerving for those side quests where you don't know what's going to happen if you dawdle about. Eventually, I got used to the time limit, thankfully. I saw it as an unfortunate circumstance rather than a sort of Damocles hanging over my head. I suppose that's how it's in real life too. You just learn to live with negative things, even if they're still causing you anguish. But I could never truly relax in the game. Even when playing mini-games while waiting for another event to start or to get an important reward. They seemed less like fun distractions and more like literal wastes of time. What made this worse was that some of them changed each day, again reminding me that I had to spend my time better. Even when I was doing quests to help people, I felt the stress weighing on my back. Thoughts like, you need to do X before the day ends, and don't forget to go to Y afterwards, kept racing through my mind. Or even just, why are you doing this? Is it even worth it? You have other things to take care of. The worst were the races, which are already something that gives me anxiety. But here, not only could my emotions not ease up during the race, but they got even worse each time I failed them. I couldn't take my time to take them slowly because, well, they're races, and also because my time was slowly ticking away in the background. An honorable mention also goes to Romani's alien hunt. It happens only during the first night, it's a timed mission, and you only get one shot at it. Since if you fail, that cute little farm girl is going to be abducted and traumatized for life. Fun! All in all, you really can't ever take it slow in this game. You have to plan ahead constantly and be ready to adjust that plan at a moment's notice if necessary. You might even have to abandon a current goal to pursue another one, simply because there just is no time. This might make everything you do in the game feel kind of pointless, because you're not really able to do everything you want. Sounds depressing for sure, but don't worry, there are more ways in which the game will depress you. Majora's Mask has potentially the most fleshed out and well-rounded characters out of any game in the series. Quite a few of them have actual motivations, dreams, and personal problems that go beyond a single "help me find my chickens." They feel like actual people. And this is especially interesting because almost all of them are side characters, who you never even have to talk to if you don't want to. And yet, they're better written than some of the main characters in other Zelda games. What makes them so engaging is simply how tragic their lives are. And this is also where the depressing nature of the game lies. Sure, you want to help these people to get a mask or a bottle or another item, but you also want to genuinely help them. That's why the side quests are this game's flesh and blood. Let's take a look at that Anju and Cafe side quest I talked about in the first chapter. Anju is the keeper of the Inn of Clocktown. She has some quirks like apologizing a lot or being bad at cooking and memorizing faces. She's also engaged to Cafe, who just left one day without letting anyone know why. Because she has no idea, she thinks he's run off, potentially with her best friend Cremia, a seed of doubt planted in her head by her mother. If you do nothing, she dies never finding out what really happened to her fiancé. But if you do decide to help, she's willing to wait for him until the moon falls, simply because she believes in him. But what happened to Cafe then? Well, he got transformed into a child by Skull Kid and then had his mask stolen. Said mask was important because he had made a promise to only meet Anju with the mask on the night of the carnival, which is also when the moon drops. He then tries to go after the thief, but if you don't intervene, he gets locked in his hideout until the moon falls. He honors his promise to his fiancée so much that he dies in an unfamiliar place, alone and feeling guilty that he couldn't even meet her. Their bond of love is so strong that if they're reunited at the end of the quest, they're willing to stay beside each other, even knowing the moon is going to kill them, because all that matters to them is each other. I've mentioned Cremia, and her life isn't the easiest either. She doesn't just have a crush on her best friend's fiancé, someone she knows she can't ever be with. She also manages her late father's farm by herself, while looking after her little sister Romani at the same time. In that regard, she actually reminds me a lot of Nani from Lilo and Stitch, just someone trying her best to take care of her family. Unfortunately, things are going poorly because of the Gorman brothers, and if you fail to help Romani fight the aliens off, all of their cows get abducted, threatening their livelihood even further. And her sister loses her mind, no doubt a traumatizing event for Cremia as well. Furthermore, she's not stupid and knows that they aren't going to be safe on their farm from the moon falling. So to protect Romani as best as she can, she's willing to get her drunk, so she won't feel anything when that happens. That's just not a choice I ever want to have to make in my entire life. We can also take a look at the origins behind the 3 main transformation masks, such as the Deku Scrub, whose soul resides in the Deku mask. He's just adorable, especially when you take a look at how cute his shell looks when playing the Elegy of Emptiness. But he's not just a cute child, he's a child that was murdered by Majora. One that left his father, the Deku Butler, without a son, which makes his line about having done one last race with a son so much more tragic. The tale of Damani III is also a tragedy. He was a war hero who failed his people by falling to his death after investigating the origin of a blizzard plaguing the lands. And he was blown off the bridge because of a fellow Goron on accident, one who doesn't even remember what he did. Or Mikao, the origin of the Zora mask and lead guitarist of the Indigogos, who tried to retrieve his love Lulu's stolen eggs, but got mortally wounded in the process, leaving Lulu without a voice and their children, and the band without a guitarist. But there are also characters whose smaller role in the story doesn't detract from how interesting they are. You have the Deku King, a father willing to torture an innocent monkey simply because he believes he's responsible for his missing daughter. The soldiers of Ikana, who still wander the earth because they're following orders made to them before their death. The bodyguards of Igos the Ikana, who are insane goofballs that bicker with each other constantly, until Igos tells them to shut up already. They are straight up comic relief, much like the beavers at the waterfall, the younger of which actually almost curses in the German version. Equally funny, despite his grim fate, is the dancer Kamaro, whose dialogue is so flowery that each line gets translated, which all made me laugh. Especially the last one, where both just say, "I'm counting on you." He also leads to a beautiful moment when you use his mask to dance with the twin sisters, fulfilling their need for a special dance for the festival. I especially liked how the cutscene showed the nearby guard looking at all 3 of us dancing together, which he then does again in the credits. That was a really impactful moment for me, because it gave such a minor and unimportant character personality, that he's not just a guard, but an appreciator of dancing. There are so many more, like Granny, who is faking her senility to get out of eating her granddaughter's bad cooking. The 2 Gorman brothers and their 3rd brother, who left them for the unfulfilling life of entertainment. Or Grog, who just wants to see his chicks grow into proud chickens. Pamela and her father, who got transformed into a Gibdo, forcing her to keep him locked up in the basement. And the Gibdos themselves, who circle the house simply because they think he's one of them. Or the bank teller, who is one of my favorite characters simply because of how reliable and helpful they are. They all have so many interesting and rich personalities, even if they're just people you talk to once and then never again. And for a lot of them, you only get to see their true face during the final hours. Many of them will have left town already, but some will stay until the bitter end. The guards were aware of the moon from day 1, but will not move from their post until the end, despite shaking in their armor, simply to protect the few people left in town. The bartender will also stay in his bar because he takes so much pride in his work. Same as the postman, who wants to leave town but cannot, just because that's not part of his schedule. They are all still doing their jobs despite the world ending, which, well, happens in our world too. Being faced with these colorful characters and seeing them struggle with their problems is just one of the most depressing things you can imagine. You want to help them, ease their pains, and give them the happy ending they truly deserve. And you can do that. You save the monkey and the princess. You thaw the winter plaguing Damani's people. You return the eggs in Lulu's voice. And you can help each citizen of Termina with their own little issues as well, no matter how big or small. But 3 days is not enough time. And sooner or later, you will have to go back to the first day, erasing all of your progress. All the sorrow that was washed away comes flooding back. Every pebble becomes a mountain again, and each consuming fire burns anew. And this puts a damper on the whole situation, to say the least. And it becomes painful getting interested in all of these lies, knowing that they're going to meet certain doom regardless of what you do. To have to rush past these people that obviously need you, but not being able to stop in order to help others. Because even if you help some, you can't help all. And even those you do save will not be saved anymore once you inevitably return to square one. So what's even the point in helping them then? If you can't save them all, why bother? That's why I'd made myself a promise. Not only would I do every single side quest in the game and obtain all the masks, but I'd also save as many people as I possibly could within 3 days before finishing the game. And that's exactly what I did. The objective: help everyone in dire need or who can't get a happy ending if I don't intervene, and make sure my efforts aren't in vain because Majora will be defeated and time will not have to be reset. Day 1. First, travel to Zora Cave and make Lulu talk again so she's not entirely helpless. Then, defeat Odalwa, clean the swamp, and return the Deku Princess to save the monkey from torture. Afterwards, defeat Goat, thawing the mountains and getting the Goron Elder back home to his child. Following this, go to Ikana Canyon, get the water flowing again to let the music drive the Gyptos away, and heal the father so he can reunite with his daughter. Then talk to Anju and meet up with her at night to receive her letter. Immediately after this, help Romani at the wrench and prevent her from getting abducted. Day 2. Have a change of heart and decide to retrieve all of Lulu's eggs anyway, just so they're safe and sound. Then meet up with Cafe and give his amulet to Anju to ensure she stays during the final day. And Day 3. Storm the hideout together with Cafe and get his mask back. Then rush back to the inn and reunite the two lovers. And finally, within the last hours, right before the moon is about to crash into the earth, go to the roof of the clock tower, face Skull Kid, and go inside the moon to put an end to the apocalypse! And then, there I was. A sunny day, an infinite meadow, a proud tree standing tall, frolicking children. The timer has stopped. Peace, tranquility, for once. Is it over? Not yet. The biggest battle has been conquered, but the war continues. One last step to take. I talked to the Moon Children and gave them all of my masks. All of my hard work and effort, the proof of my help for the people of Termina, given away for children to use as toys. And after 4 excruciating mini-dungeons, I came face to face with Majora itself. But first, let's take a look at the one thing that's been staring down at us throughout our whole adventure. The moon. What do you think this face truly represents? To me, it's obvious. It's something we've spent all game with. Stress, confusion, and depression. It's clenching its teeth together as hard as it can because it is terrified knowing that it's being used to wipe out all life on Earth and itself. Its eyes are torn wide open because it's trying to make sense of why this is happening. It's crying out of the sheer sadness over being unable to do anything about it. The moon is me. It's you. It's everyone playing the game. It's the embodiment of every negative emotion you're going to feel during the game, a reaction to the unsurmountable odds being cast at you. And if the moon is the reaction, then Majora is the action, weaponizing every single one of those emotions against you. Because the final battle is nothing short of an insane, chaotic, overwhelming mess. First, the mask floats across the room, tentacles thrashing about wildly. Then it grows limbs and makes a mad dash, laughing maniacally, clucking like a chicken, dancing and moonwalking across the room. And last, it gains a head and flails its whip-like appendages around, trying to beat you into submission. It's faster than you, it's stronger than you, and it will not stop for you. There is no time for you to pause, to think, to take a breather, or even plan ahead. Just like it was the case throughout the entire game. I still absolutely clown on it using the Fierce Lady mask though. It's only fitting, I think, that the culmination of every negative emotion I felt throughout the game was me having to face them head on. And it's not always a positive thing to convey these emotions in the first place, especially in a game meant to be fun and entertaining. But art doesn't have to be pretty. It can be ugly, repulsive, or even work against you. What matters is how it makes you feel and what it means to you. So then, what does all of this mean? Well, this is something I realized while parading little chicks around to turn them into chickens. It seemed like such a silly and inconsequential quest. I mean, really, was this how I was spending my time when everyone was about to die? But that's not what it's about. These tasks might seem pointless because everything gets reset afterwards anyway. But the reason you're doing them isn't just for your own benefit or entertainment. You're doing it to inspire hope in people. Maybe these people can't remember your deeds, but that doesn't mean they're not worth doing. You're always making a difference, and if maybe not for them, then for people in real life. Because Link's willingness to help anyone, even if it all seems for naught, can show anyone playing the game that doing anything is better than doing nothing at all. And the embodiment of anxiety and confusion and depression might be the terrified visage of a celestial body, staring down at a planet which you will soon make contact with. And by extension, the driving force behind those concepts of dread and destruction might be a mask with 2 unblinking eyes staring right into your soul. But much like the moon will be stopped by the cold ground of a town awaiting the yearly carnival, the unstoppable force Majora meets an immovable object, Link, the embodiment of hope, compassion, and courage. A face not torn apart by pain and misery, but one of a child. The endless possibilities of life being written all over it, and the stories of pursuing them yet to be told. Majora's Mask's story will always be topical. There will always be an imminent threat looming over everyone's head. One side may understand the danger and attempt to do something about it. The second may not, or may deem it unimportant, or may even benefit from it. And the third side may sit idly by, not knowing what to do or simply not caring. And this can be anything. It can be a pandemic, a climate change, a war, a famine. No one wishes to live through any of these, but they do happen, always have, always will. And the people that do try to make a change might not even have the means to make a meaningful impact by themselves. And yet, that's not a reason to not try. If anything, it's even more of a reason to do so. Because much like Link, who picked up his sword and his instrument, you too can see that it's worth setting out into a bleak and unforgiving world, in an attempt to change it for the better. He didn't choose to be there, but it was his choice to keep going. As Jacob Geller puts it, Majora's Mask isn't just about the inevitable end of the world, it's about recognizing that inevitability and still choosing to fight against it. So I hope that you too can face the moon of your own life, look it deep into its eyes, put on a mask to become your own Link, and fight back.